All right, the stats are in for the month of August in New Brunswick, and we're just going to dive right into it, starting with the region of Fredericton. So, Fredericton, the sales were down 10.6% for the month of August. Again, very small sample size when you're going with single month data in a province like New Brunswick, where there just simply is not a lot of sales. The sale to new listing ratio is still firmly in seller's market territory at 73.5%. The months of inventory is flat from last year, and the average price is actually up 22% for that month of August. However, small sample size. Year to date, the sales are up 2.8%. The new listings are up 1.7%. Active inventory is up 3.6%. Sale to new listing ratio has essentially been flat for the last 3 years. And that MOI has mostly been consistent minus 2022, where it was 1.7. The average price and the median price are both up 9% on the year. And the SLPR, so the sale to the list price ratio. So if the list price is 100,000 and you're paying 98,000, that's a 98% SLPR. That is at 100.3%, which is actually slightly down from 100.8% last year. So most of the stuff in Fredericton seems to be going over asking, which kind of makes sense with a lot of the return to the office movements going around the country. There's a lot of centralization in Fredericton for these government jobs. All right, now let's go into St. John. So St. John is actually doing extremely well, and not to toot my own horn, but I did kind of call it. I felt that St. John was a lot more resilient than it was being given credit for. It was listed as the most exposed city in all of Canada due to the tariffs. However, the existence of the port, the amount of money that they've been pouring into that port to be able to ship things, not just to the US, but overseas, is actually significant. They've done a lot to really keep that area going, and they're also home to the largest private employer in New Brunswick. And as the economy continues to get worse, we're going to have to lean a little bit more on these private employers to keep the economy going. So I think overall, St. John actually has a little bit more of a bull case than a lot of other parts in the New Brunswick region. So single month data, sales were up 13.7% from last August. New listings were up 14.3%. Active listings were up 6.7%. The sale to new listing ratio is still firmly in seller's market territory. MOI is 3.1, so it's actually down from last year a little bit. The average price and the median price are essentially flat, and the SLPR is 106.1. Median days on market, about 3 weeks. Overall, and year to date, by the way, year to date, it's essentially the same. The sales up 8.1%, new listings up 13%, active inventory up 1.5%. The sale to new listing ratio is down a little bit, but still firmly in seller's market territory at 68.2. The average price of 365 and median of 335, SLPR of 105.6. Very similar to the single month data for August. St. John overall is performing quite well. No one knows where any of this is going to go, but as far as New Brunswick real estate goes, I think St. John is probably more worth the risk than a lot of other regions simply due to the economic upside it has that simply does not exist in other parts of New Brunswick. Okay, now into northern New Brunswick. This is a very niche, large geographical region with a very small sample size. This is basically everything from Miramichi to Edmundston to Campbellton, all of the northern areas of the province. It's called Northern and Valley on our system, but most people in New Brunswick will call it Northern New Brunswick. The sales were down in the month of August 6.4%. The new listings were up 10.2%, active inventory down 6.8%. And again, small sample size, especially here at 147 total sales. So I'm just going to jump right into the year to date. Sales up on the year, 4.1% year to date. So that's this time compared to last time around the same time of year. So all the way from January to the end of August. The new listings are up 6.8%. Active inventory is basically flat, negative 0.5. The sale to new listing ratio is balanced at 59.3. Again, very normal for this time of year. It's actually down from the last few years. The months of inventory is actually gone down a little bit to 6.1 from 6.4. If you're from Ontario, you might think that's crazy, but that's normal for northern New Brunswick. Even in the absolute peak of the market, the MOI in this area was like 5, 6. I don't even know if it dropped below 4 at any point during the peak. I'm seeing 4.4 in 2022. So it's a slow moving market even when it's hot. The SLPR here is 94.7%. So you can get a little bit better of a deal. And the average days on market, median days on market is 48. All right, now into Moncton. So Moncton, of course, is the region I actually do sell in. I'm licensed to sell anywhere in New Brunswick, but Moncton is my bread and butter. It's the area I know the best. Not just Moncton, but the surrounding areas. Essentially, anywhere within an hour of the city of Moncton, I do. So let's get into this, because this is the market I know quite well, and I have a lot of opinions about. So for the single month of August, sales were down 16.5%. The dollar volume, so total dollar volume of sales, was down 10.9%. New listings were up 7.8%. That's that widening gap that I've been talking about for a while. And that is the largest discrepancy that we have seen in several years between new listings and sales. The sale to new listing ratio remains in seller's market territory, which is normal for this time of year. Over the last few years, they've typically ranged between 70 and 80%. Even back in 2015, the sale to new listing ratio for August was 64.8. It is 66 right now. So this market is actually a lot more similar to 2015 than it is to any of the other years over the last few years. It's a nearly 20% drop from 2024. It is a 14% drop from 2023. And even 2022, the second half of that year, it's still about 4% less. The MOI is interesting here. It shot up almost 2 full months. It went from 3.3 from this time last year to 5.1 this year. That's pretty substantial. I'm not a huge MOI guy, but that's a huge jump for a single month. The average price, though, and the median price are both up 6.8 and 4.9% respectively. I have opinions on why that might be. I think overall real estate in Moncton comes with quite a bit of risk. When you're talking about a declining market where every other stat is going sharply down except for the price, it means that the risk is not being factored into what you're paying for. So median days on market is 42, so that's an extra 12 days compared to August of last year. And the sale to list price ratio is 96.9 compared to 97.4 last year. And sorry, I might have said year to date a couple of times here. This is just for the month of August. Now we're going to go year to date. So larger sample size, a little bit easier to draw from. Sales year to date are essentially flat, 0.7% increase. The new listings are up 9.3%. Active inventory is up 28.8%. The sale to new listing ratio year to date is 60.1. So technically still in seller's market, but barely hanging on. And that's 60.1%. Is very similar to 2018 where it was 62.7. The months of inventory went from 3.3 to 4.2, and that's year to date. So that's the 1st of January to the end of August. The median price and average price are up about 4.2 to 2.3%. And the sale to list price ratio is 97.2, so down 1.2% from what it was this time last year. Median days on market, 35. That's up about 6 days. Overall, the market definitely feels quite a bit slower than what it looks like. Now let's dive into a few of the localized regions here in Moncton. So we're going to start with Dieppe. Dieppe is an area I'm actually pretty bullish on. I think Dieppe has a lot going for it. Downtown Dieppe, I think, is going to overtake downtown Moncton in a matter of years, maybe 2 or 3 years. It's just much more properly developed. It doesn't really have any like sketchy areas that you don't want to walk down. Overall, Dieppe is probably the area I'm the most bullish on, aside from maybe Riverview in the Moncton region. So with that being said, keep in mind, very small sample size here. Okay, we're talking about 31 total sales. That's actually down 42% for the month of August compared to last year. New listings up 3.4%. Active inventory is at 57% increase from last year. The sale to new listing ratio has gone from 93.1% to 51.7%. I could go on and on, but this is a very, very, very small sample size. So let's just go to year to date. Year to date, the sales are down 10.8%. The new listings are up 5.7%. Active listings are up 48.1%. The sale to new listing ratio is at 62.7%, which is the lowest since at least 2018. The average price actually went down a little bit by 0.5%, and the median is up by 2%. Median days on market, a little over a month. Now, just the region of Moncton. So again, sales down 12.4%. I'm not going to dwell too much on the single month data because we're talking about less than 100 total sales. It's very hard to draw any conclusions off of sample sizes that small. So let's just go year to date. These sales are up 3.3%. New listings are up 13.4%. Active inventory is up 39.1%. Sale to new listing ratio is down, but still in seller's market territory. Months of inventory is up almost a full month. Average price and median price are essentially flat at 2 and 1%, which is a more healthy growth of market prices. The sale to list price ratio is 98.1%, so that's down 1.9% from this time last year. And it definitely feels that way overall in the market. It feels a lot slower than even what this data indicates. Shediac. So Shediac is an even smaller sample size. So I'm just going to go year to date. Sales down 14.3%. New listings down 9.7%. Active inventory is down 2.4%. The sale to new listing ratio is at 50.5, which is almost perfectly balanced. The MOI is at 6.2, which is quite a massive jump. That is over double the MOI that we had this time in August of 2022, so year to date. The average and median are up 10.6 and 3.9%. The sale to list price ratio is at 96.9%, and median days on market is 47. Okay, now on to Riverview. Again, we're talking less than 30 sales, so I'm just going to jump right into the year to date data. Sales are up 18.1%. The new listings are up 26%. Active listings are up 62%. The sale to new listing ratio is about 70%, a little bit down from last year, strongly in seller's market territory. MOI is 2.9, so that's up 0.8. The average price is up 3.4%. And the median is flat from last year, 0.1%. The sale to list price ratio is down from 101 to 98.8, and the median days on market is at 28. So, Riverview, it's another area I'm quite bullish on overall. It's great for first time buyers. You get a nice variety. It's good for townhouses if you like townhouses. It's good if you like sort of those like older style of homes around like McAllister Park. It's really hard to go wrong in Riverview, much like the West End. Throw a dart at the map. It's hard to find a bad deal in Riverview. They do exist, so be careful, but overall, Riverview and Dieppe have a little bit more of a bull case, and I think there's probably a room to grow in Riverview overall. I'm not saying you should spend $400,000 on a raised ranch, but there is probably more of a case to do it there than somewhere like the hospital. Now let's get on to some of the economic stuff. So the bond yields are essentially hovering around 3%. They're quite volatile right now. A lot of people are talking about things like rate cuts. I think the bond yields are the ones to watch. Most of the people that do mortgages are doing fixed rate mortgages, which means the short term rate cuts really don't mean anything for you. So it's more important to watch these bond yields. I'm not an economics guy. I've definitely read some books and I have some opinions, but overall, the best thing you can do is try not to worry too much about the details and prepare yourself for recession, because whether or not the recession is here, it's most likely coming, and we're at the very beginning of this, not the middle and not the end. So make sure your finances are in order. Try not to take out bad debt. Do what you can to lower your overhead expenses. And overall, just try to make sure that your own house is in order. Now let's talk a little bit about this U.S. announcement on the 17th or 16th of September. I forget which date. It's the same date as ours, actually, here in Canada. But I guess the markets are saying there's an 80% odds that they are going to cut the rates. Again, especially not a U.S. economics guy here, but I was reading a article posted by Morgan Stanley, who I believe are at least somewhat reputable. They think that it's closer to a 50-50. So as usual, nobody really knows what's happening. Nobody knows what's going on. And the last thing you should do is try to make decisions in your life that are based off of decisions someone else is going to make, which are based off of decisions someone else is going to make. Ultimately, keep your house in order. Try not to worry too much about the noise, and try not to make your decisions based off of optimistic projections. Now, my personal 2 cents, and again, this is not a prediction, I just don't think that we're going to be cutting rates in September with the BOC. Even if they do cut with the US, it's just not a lot of notice. We get the labor force survey on the 5th, which is definitely ample time to look at it. People are expecting bad jobs data, which seems reasonable. However, we get our CPI prints on the 16th, one day before our BOC announcement. I don't think it's going to be enough time. Even if that CPI is showing deflation, I don't think it would be enough time for the Bank of Canada to make that decision. But overall, we have a announcement date on the 29th of October and the 10th of September. So if they don't cut then, it's possible to cut later. I don't think it's going to have any sort of an impact on the real estate markets in Canada. Ultimately, Canada's economic situation is not good at all. The debt levels in Canada have definitely reached a point where they are beyond sketchy, and it's really hard to see how they're going to be able to do this. One interesting thing with economics is that the existence of financing was originally started to help companies and manufacturers keep up with production so they can meet the growing amount of demand. Eventually, it shifted to increasing the capacity of purchasing by consumers. So it was no longer about increasing production, it was about increasing the ability for the consumers to buy more things. And this really kind of went crazy around 1970, 1980, where it got to the point where we are now in astronomical amounts of household debt, no matter where you look in the world. Canada might be one of the worst ones for this. A lot of that, of course, is tied up into real estate values, but it's not just real estate values. Next week, I believe on September 9th, there's an Equifax Market Pulse consumer trends for the second quarter of 2025 that will give us some very valuable insights on the credit market. I expect there might be some rather shocking numbers in that, like there were in the last one. Ultimately, Canada's in a pretty sketchy situation right now. Our economy is definitely built up on things that may or may not be sustainable. I don't think they are. And I think people would be very wise to consider these things before they make purchases or decisions around real estate. Always base your decisions off of reality and not hopes and dreams, because at the end of the day, If things turn out better than what you expected, you're in a good situation. Be careful out there. Try not to make bad decisions in real estate. Not a bad time to be patient and careful. And at the end of the day, yes, this is real estate advice, but it might not be applicable to your situation. So contact a local qualified professional prior to making any decisions related to real estate or finance. I'm a realtor here in New Brunswick with Royal LePage Atlantic. My opinions do not reflect other people in my office or other members of the Canadian Real Estate Association or the New Brunswick Real Estate. Thank you for watching. If you want to follow along, click like and subscribe. I'll have more coming soon. Thank you.